Today I'm going to show you how to produce in the style of country Nickelback, Florida Georgia Line. I don't know why I'm doing this. Honestly, I just made this random country beat and it's really fun and it's really cool and I did a lot of cool stuff on it, and so I thought I would show you guys. I chose Florida Georgia Line just because I feel like they're kind of the epitome of this sort of like country pop sound that for some reason a lot of people hate. I'm just going to be honest, guys. It's really fun to make. So I'm going to show you how to produce this style that everybody loves to hate. But before we jump into that, my name is Seth. I produce under the name Velvet Ear. I specialize in taking song ideas from artists and turning them into a polished song ready for a Spotify release. Songs I've produced and written have been on these playlists. I put up one of these videos every Thursday to show people how to produce their own music. But if you have a project that you would like to hire me on, check out the top link of the description and we can get started. Now to pop country. So we will start out by showing you exactly what we have. So yeah, I'm really happy with how this one turned out. Let's start with the acoustic guitars. So all the guitars recorded on this song, we're using this guy. This is an orange wood. It's not that expensive of a guitar, which is another reason why I'm happy I was able to get such clean results with it. Honestly, I feel like as long as you're tailoring the acoustic guitar you have to the mix that you're trying to make, and you sort of work around the guitars, most of the time you can get something pretty useful. Also, mic placement. But anyway, first we have these acoustic guitars. Which are double tracked because double tracking makes everything better. Let me just turn off all the processing on these. And then honestly, with these guys, a lot of the heavy lifting is just done with some basic compression and limiting. So we have a compressor here just to sort of bring up the things after the transient. And then we have a basic L1 limiter just to catch the transients that are poking through, make it a little bit more even. As I said before, we're double tracking this. And right there, that already gets a majority of the acoustic tone. And then I threw on this Kramer tape saturation. I like this tape saturator because when you throw it on the 7.5 IPS speed, it really dulls up the high end in a natural, organic way, if that makes sense. So without, with. There is also a little bit of a volume difference, but you get what I'm talking about. And then down here, I have these little lead guys. They're playing the same chords. They're just playing them higher up on the neck with a capo, just to add a little bit of depth to the chords that these guys are playing. And then all of these guys are running into a group. Doing a little bit of filtering. I'm using a lot of soothe on this, mainly to get rid of that like pick sizzle that sort of builds up when you're layering acoustic guitars, but also to get rid of some of the woofiness of that sort of higher mid-range stuff. Without. With. Just so it tightens up everything. And then, so this is a funny story. So right now I have this sort of relationship with Slate Digital, which is really cool because they're one of my favorite plugin companies. But I'm like doing some promotional stuff for some of their plugins. And John from Slate said, hey, we would love it if you did something with the MoTT plugin, which is this guy here. And in the course of me making a demo for this plugin, I really fell in love with it. And it just kind of makes everything sound a little bit better. For anyone that doesn't know, Ableton has this setting for their multi-band effect called OTT, which stands for over the top. And people really love this preset because it levels things out almost like a limiter, adds a little bit of presence, really tames some of the muddy frequencies. In fact, people loved it so much that they took that Ableton preset and multiple companies have made their own OTT plugin separate outside of Ableton to sort of do the same thing. But Slate has gone above and beyond creating a plugin that is super useful, super versatile. And it's honestly just way better than all the other ones that I've tried. There's so many ways to dial in the sound the way that you want it. So let me just show you. Without. With. Without. With. it just makes everything smile a little bit more. It just feels like there's a blanket over the sound and it just kind of lifts it up a bit. And this is only on like 16%. But yeah, so really love this plugin and I'm going to be using it like way more. But yeah, those are the acoustic guitars. We then have this sort of funky lead thing going on. These sort of gritty, country, slappy leads. You got to use a telly whenever you're recording stuff like that. So I found this amp preset in Guitar Rig 6 that I made. It actually looks like I made it for a hollow body, but it's using a sort of Dumble style amp with a little bit of EQ and some compression. Very basic patch. And then we're going into a little bit of limiting. Just taking the top off, going into some more MoTT. And then a little bit of H delay to give it some space. We are then doubling that guy up with the same patch essentially, but playing the guitar an octave lower. If you're wondering why it sounds so weird, it's because I didn't bother playing it an octave lower. I just took the performance that I had and transposed it an octave down, which I'm fine if I'm doing it just to add some beef underneath a pre-existing layer. If it was the main part, I would be a little bit pickier with it. And then we have this slide part. So this is Arcade 2.0, using the Nashville line on the Barstool slide preset, doing some more MoTT on it with some limiting and H delay. And now we're moving on to the bass. So we're doing quite a bit here. We're just using a basic P bass, going into this DI bass preset on Guitar Rig 6. I find that throwing DIs into an amp sim tends to give you a little bit more harmonic richness, and it just makes them easier to mix. Then we're doing a little bit of EQ and compression, just to tame it a bit, throwing it into CLA bass, using a modified DI feeder preset. And then again, a little bit of L1 just to tame the peaks. And then I threw a compressor on it to sidechain it to the kick and the snare. And it just fits in the mix super well. And then the last thing we're going to go through is the drums. So we have a shaker. Once again, we have clap impact. If you're not convinced by now, clap impact just works in every single song ever. And then I did something weird with this track. I used a bunch of different kits and instruments from different sample libraries. So the main kick and snare are used from this GGD One Kit Wonder kit. And then underneath that, I've used the same MIDI, but I've replaced the samples. We're using the Taylor Larson Luke Holland sample pack. Just to add a little beef under those guys. And then for the cymbals, we're using Superior Drummer. I think I'm using the Rock Solid ECX. And all of that is going into a bus. And on that, we're using the FET 76 comp from Arturia. Again, just using L1 to tame the peaks. Looks like it's really only triggering on the snare. And then a little bit of MoTT to sort of bring out the brightness and remove some of the mud. Also to get that like hyper compressed sound, which sounds a little too compressed, but at the same time, it's really fun to listen to it that way. And then I thought I would go through my mastering chain real quick. Ignore this utility thing here at the end. That's just to get it at the right level for the capture device. But I'm using some Infinity EQ from Slate, doing a bit of high pass here. And then we're doing a high pass on the sides separately, bringing that up to about like 75, it looks like, and then doing a little cut at 1K on the sides. And that just kind of tightens the stereo field. One of the best ways to get your mixes to sound good, assuming everything else is in place, is to make your bass mono. And this is just my preferred way of doing that. I'll leave the limiters on. You're not going to be able to hear it that much, but it'll just tighten up everything on the other side. And then we have this bus force from Arturia, and I like using the filter and the compressor basically to just compress the crap out of the mids, but the mids only. And then you can use this knob up here to sort of blend it in a bit. It's very subtle. We are then using MV2 to just bring up a little bit of everything. Think of it as a compressor where you have a separate control for reducing the peaks and raising everything else up without. With doing a little bit of max bass to improve that low end saturation without. With. I like the ultra low end extender preset personally. I'll normally mix this into taste. Fresh air just gives it a little bit of brightness. Sometimes I won't use this depending on how the mix is. Without. And then here I do some additive EQ. So I boost the sides on the high end and then a couple places in the mid range, depending on what the song needs. And then I actually use 2 limiters on different settings. This is a trick that I learned from Nick Tello. So here, let me just group everything together that's not the limiters and show you what a difference it's making. So here is with, without, with, without, with. Just makes everything brighter, more consistent. That's probably the best example I can give for what mastering is for people who don't know. And then, as I said before, this is just to get it ready for the capture card. I have to reduce the volume a bit. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this. Check out the last episode I did of this one last week where I showed you how to produce like Lauv. And I'll see you guys next week.